Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the August 18th, 2023 Commission meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order and have a roll call, please. Here.
Here.
He's not coming. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
You're going to second it since we're the only two?
Second that?
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so we are going to have a discussion this morning with the Lincoln National Forest. So we're going to just turn it over to you, Erica, and let you start off with your latest update on the items of interest to the county, including USFS personnel changes.
Okay, can you hear me? Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I apologize. I was not able to make the meeting a week ago, and so appreciate you making space for us today. I have a few people with me. So Marjorie Seeley is the Deputy Forest Supervisor in the permanent capacity, and then I also have Diane Prather, who is the Forest Planner and has been spearheading forest plan revision. So wanted to make sure if there were questions about that, I had the right mix of people with me. Am I squeaking? Is that
better?
okay? All right. I don't want to have too many squelches. So I came on detail assignment as the acting Deputy Forest Supervisor in April, and just the relationship with the counties and the communities that we serve are of the utmost importance. And so any opportunity that we have to share information with any of the 4 counties, we always take that up. We want to be present. And that is something that you can expect with whoever the next person is. So part of my update, Commissioner, as I told you, we did not get a permanent forest supervisor. So the intent was to not have anybody after me except for the permanent. But unfortunately, we were not able to hire a permanent at this time. So there will be another detailer, another acting person. I should know who that is this afternoon. And then we'll have some time to transition together. And so I've promised a warm handoff with several different folks, and we can add anybody that we need to that list. And then I'm still in the region, and so I will be available to make sure that the projects that were started this summer under my tenure are continued to move forward. And that is something that the regional forester has directed. So you should continue to see the same level of engagement. The other personnel that I think you would, personnel update that I think that you would be interested in is Bob Boxworth was the permanent ranger. He is the permanent ranger, but he's had some health issues, and so he is on a detail assignment right now. So he's not in the ranger capacity. He's still on the forest, but he's currently doing a different job, and he'll be doing that for about 6 months. Ronnie Mays will be in the ranger capacity for 6 months. And at the next commission meeting, he will be here with the person who's following me, so that you can get to know them as well. So those are the 2 big personnel pieces. And then, I was just trying to think about, I appreciate the agenda ahead of time, because I was just thinking about what the county might be interested in. So from a partnership standpoint, we've been working very closely with the Range Improvement Task Force out of New Mexico State. Sam's been really great, and RITF put in for a grant, and they got it, and they're going to be doing some forage utilization studies. They started this summer. We're working through their permit, but there were some pieces that just made sense, and so they went ahead and got started on that. They are going to be looking at some drone surveys, and with drones, that's there's some timing restrictions and some things like that. So we're working through a few of those pieces, and then where it makes sense for them to go out and start, they did. So that's been really great. That data is going to be helpful in future decisions and just how we work across the landscape. They are working in partnership with U of A also. It's a continuation of a study that happened a couple of years ago. And so to see that added data that will include camera studies and a few other things is just such a good opportunity. So we're excited to be working with them. And then we're also working closely with State of New Mexico State Forestry. So the forest has worked really hard on an area to get all cleared and all NEPA ready. It's called 16 Springs. And so that is what we call landscape NEPA, which means it's like a big chunk. We're looking at a big area. It's 10,000 acres, and we're looking at utilizing multiple tools in the toolkit. So thinning, mastication, prescribe burn, piles, broadcast, all of the tools that we have available. And the state of New Mexico, this is also of interest to them twofold. One, it is a priority watershed for the state. And then two, this is a very critical WUI area. So this is up, we're talking about Sacramento's around Cloudcroft. And when I say WUI, that's the wildland urban interface. And so really where homes and private property meet the forest. And we recognize that we need to do some work in there, some major work. We need to protect those homes, we need to protect that private property, and we also need to protect the forest. And so this area is now fully cleared. We're good to go. The state is looking at starting with 40 acres in what is their most critical area, and then they'll expand. They're focusing on about 650-ish acre area that's priority for them. And then, like I said, the total footprint is 10,000 acres. The other thing I want to note is, I was talking about the tools in the toolbox, broadcast burning, things like that. So we also have what's called first and second entry. So a first entry is where we go in. So with the 10,000 acres, you gotta, situate smaller chunks. We can't go in and do 10,000 acres in one day. So you identify different areas, and then, we just start chugging along, doing the smaller blocks, which is why, like the 40 acres, that's like a nice chunk to start with, and then you expand, and it's complementary so that we're not just doing like scatter shot. And so I want to talk about first and second entry. So first entry is areas that we have not gone into yet. Second entry is areas that have been thinned or been burned, but it's been 5 years, 10 years, and now we need to go in and do it again. So once you thin or burn or do these kind of project areas, it's not a one and done. You still have to go in, there's still maintenance, you still have to go in however many years later for whatever that type is. Different vegetation types have different amounts of time that you need to go in. So some of those second entries are just ripe, and we're looking at starting with a 2,500 acre second entry that's really going to help protect homes. So that's where we're starting. And then this summer, the forestry folks, man, they have worked so hard. So they have 2,300 acres that are prepped for prescribed fire. So they go in and they do hand lines. And so we have to have points where we can have good ways to stop the fire. So places to tie in, places to like have good roads where we can get equipment in. And so they've got those areas prepped so that we can look at doing some of the larger broadcast burns. This summer we have managed 2 fires, and so what that means is we had some cleared NEPA areas and there was a lightning strike. And so we did risk analysis and decided that we were going to manage that fire for resource benefit. All fires are managed fires, but it's a matter of how you manage it. So we did make sure that we had places that we could contain it, and then we let that area burn so that we could get those good broadcasts. Those fires were low and slow. There's one that's over in the Capitans right now that's doing really good things. It's just moving through old dead and down logs from previous fires, and it's just cleaning everything up. It's exactly what you would want to see in a natural fire. So that's been great. Good resource support, and we've been working with the regional office, and so those are doing good things. We also have piles, and so we do pile burns. So we've done a few pile burns this summer, and I'm really proud of all of the fire folks. We had to have some hard conversations, and we did decide to cancel a pile burn, so we did not light it. We do what's called a test burn, where we just see in a small area what that fire is going to do, what the fire behavior is. And they made the decision that it was burning a little too hot, and it wasn't going to get the ground conditions that we were looking for, and so we canceled the burn. So there's just a lot of thought that is going into what is going to be right for the landscapes. So that's all related to 16 Springs, and then the fire update. I also want to talk about South Sacramento Restoration Project. So you'll hear that called SSRP. So that's a restoration project that is 140,000 acres. Now, this is an area that we have been working on the NEPA for a long time. Quite frankly, we've been working on it for too long. It should have been done, and I make no excuses for it, but I do want you to know that I recognize there's a lot of questions about SSRP. It's going to be a phenomenal project, and we're going to get really, really good work done in there. The NEPA was submitted to Fish and Wildlife Service. We do have to go through consultation. It was accepted, which means that we're now in formal consultation with the service, and we anticipate that we'll have a decision by spring of 24. So we're hoping that we're estimating that the final decision will be signed, that is right, in spring 24. So there is there's some places that need a little bit more owl survey. So there's still a little bit of work that needs to be done, but once that is ready, they're gonna be able to do some really, really great work.
Did you say elk survey?
Owl.
Owl, okay.
Yes,
Mhm.
sorry. Owl survey. So the purpose of SSRP is to, again, this is getting back to, it's very similar to 16 Springs. It's really to restore that landscape. Get it thinned out, get it back into good condition, focus on WUI areas, and meet the wildfire crisis strategy objectives, so that we can reduce those uncharacteristic catastrophic wildfires. We do not want that to happen on the Lincoln. And so we're working really hard to have good NEPA surveys done and having dollars prepared for implementation. So these kind of projects are all in our 5-year plan. We're looking hard at what we can realistically do and what those priorities are. And so those priorities are doing that kind of work. Let's see. Do you have any questions about?
I do. I was wondering if we can get a copy of the grant that you received and a copy of your grant application so that we can see any plans that you submitted in order to be awarded that grant for your forage study?
Oh, so yeah, that's actually not our study. So we worked in conjunction with RITF, and they found a grantor. I'm not sure who their grantor is, but we worked, they had to make sure that they could do the work on the forest, and we're fully supportive of that. So let me just check with Sam, because the details on the project, he's been very open on, and the financial piece is not something that I have full access to.
Yeah, I want to see intent and requirements.
Sure. Okay.
And you said the SSRP is going to be about 32,000 acres? Is that what you said?
SSRP is 140,000 acres.
140.
Yes. And 16 Springs is 10,000.
Okay.
And the SSRP, you said there was a list of priorities. Can you also send us that list of priorities?
So the priorities are the WUI area, and we can certainly get you information on what that looks like. Those areas are identified by the state, so we use their mapping tools. But yes, I'd be happy to share
Okay,
that.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. So the other thing that I thought that would be of interest, I know there's been a lot of questions about Bluff Springs and the recreation management. So I've spent a lot of time out there looking at it, seeing how people are using it, and the ranger, Ron Mays, has also been going out with his staff. So there needs to be a different management plan for that area, a recreation plan for that area. And so we have started that. We brought in a landscape architect to help us think through what that area could look like, some potential changes. No decisions have been made at that time, but we are investing time to do an analysis because we know some things just need to change there. We did put some mitigations in. We put in boulders so that we can change the flow of parking. That did cut off some of the parking, but it's helping with people being able to drive right down close to the water. And we increased trash pickup there and just having people present. So we've started. That's going to be longer term than my tenure here, but I heard that loud and clear when I first got here, and so I just wanted to give you a little update because that is something I told you I would check in on. So those are the big things that I thought you would be interested in. And then are there any other things that I'm missing that are of interest to the county that we can talk about?
I think I wanted to open it up for the other commissioners that we have here and see if they have any questions. if
Sure.
That's okay? Did anybody, I know we've got Eddie here in Chavez County. Anybody have any questions you'd like to bring up?
I just have one quick question. My name's Michael Perry. I'm from Chavez County. Of these projects that you're talking about, this 160,000 acres.
One second, Michael. We need.
You need a microphone?
That mic works, right? We-
So,
Okay. We're gonna give you a mic, and anyone that does ask a question, please
Last
state.
time I had one of these, I sang at a wedding. So
Yeah, just state your name and ask your question.
My name's Michael Perry. I'm from Chavez County. My question was, these projects that you're talking about, the 168,000 acres and possibly another 24 or 2,000 or whatever the acres is.
10,000.
How far along before those would be completed from today?
So that's a good question. I have a squishy answer, and I don't like to give squishy answers.
A year, 10 years?
It's not going to be a year. It's going to take longer than a year. You know, when we talk about restoration activities and we're and we go in and do this work, it's not one and done, and that's where we need to have really strong planning cycles on the Lincoln, so that you know, in 10 years, if we do a chunk today, in 10 years, we need to do that second entry, that third entry, that fourth entry.
Yeah, I absolutely realize that, but when would be the first stage be done?
So
I realize it might be a 10 and done, but when is number one done? The first phase, when you get in there and actually start moving stuff around and actually start doing something, when is that?
You know, that's a good question. I need to get back to you on that. What I can do is sit down with my folks and look at where, you know, where those WUI areas are. We can get some maps and we can look at where we're going to be starting. The state project is going to be the first one that we're helping to support, and they've been great on that. And like that first chunk of 40 acres, like when will the completion date be done? I don't know, but we can certainly get more information about that. And that's in no way putting the state on the hook or throwing them under the bus or anything. It's just a really, it's been great to work with them and have that coordination and that partnership to make sure that our areas of interest are in alignment, because there's places that they want to work, there's places that we want to work, and we want to have that cascading effect so that they're not doing something over here and we're doing something over here, and it's not giving that that good break for wildfire.
In the vein of these two projects that you're talking about, geographically speaking, do they lie within this like wilderness characteristic that you guys had talked about going to before?
No.
Are they within those boundaries?
No.
So they would not be affected if that goes down the road?
I'm sorry, can
The
you say
like
that?
wilderness characteristics that you guys were talking about implementing, these projects wouldn't be affected because they're outside of that zone. The 140,000 acres or something that you guys were talking
Does
about.
that fall into the...
Yeah.
Okay. So the short answer is no. In the preferred alternative for plan, we're talking about plan revision right now, okay? Which we've been working on for a while. And in our EIS, there's like 5, maybe 6 alternatives now because we've modified one. So and we are saying that our preferred alternative is on the Sacramento district, there is no recommended wilderness, none. And so all this work is taking place on the Sacramento district, and if the preferred alternative is selected, none of these projects will be in recommended wilderness because there will be no recommended wilderness on the Sacramento district.
Is your recorder working over there, Mr. Nichols? No wilderness. I think I heard her say that twice. All right. I'll rest with that. I'm good.
I'm Jason Burns with Ada County. I guess the only question I'd have is, You kind of mentioned your NEPA and what you're going through on that. What are your hangups on that? And is that going through your office as the Forest Service, or are you working through BLM on that? Who's kind of the oversight and the sign off on that? And what are some of your hangups on that you're running into?
Sure. We don't go through BLM for NEPA. There are some things that we work with BLM for, land exchanges. There's a handful of things. But in terms of NEPA, it's actually a very elegant law when you really look into it. It's pretty short.
That's a nice way to describe it.
The landscape on the Lincoln is it's beautiful, and it's these interesting canyons, and it allows for this diverse species. And so I'm saying this because when you asked about hang-ups, the diverse species that we manage for include endangered species, and that can make things complicated. And so we do have a 2-year requirement for owl surveys, and so that is going to make things longer, and that's part of the recovery plan. Those owls are doing really well. Packs are healthy. Packs are doing really well. We're
Packs?
also, I'm sorry, a PAC, a Protected Activity Center.
Okay.
So that's where.
I was wondering if you were talking about wolves. That's why I was.
No.
We're going to start a whole new conversation.
That was not on the agenda.
No, it's not.
A Protected Activity Center. That's the area that these the breeding owls are using, and so that 2-year survey makes it tough. It lengthens everything. We talk about time frames. So if I go in and I do all my surveys, then I'm good to go. Then I have to add a year because I need a second year. So that can make it tough. We're working better. We're working really well actually with Fish and Wildlife Service. We've increased communications. We've had them come out on the ground. We've been doing surveys together. There's some radio collaring that we've been doing with them. So those are some of the hang-ups. And we've also been working as a team, the employees on the Lincoln just working as a team. Where can we find some efficiencies? Where can we try to speed things up? How do we be very, very clear in our statement of what we want to do? That's I was thinking about what did I do this summer, right? I need to be able to say that, and some of the more boring, mundane things is looking at how are we working, and is that working? Where can we find some of those places? How can we support employees? How can we get better training? There's a lot of brand new employees. There's been some turnover, and those are all that's not tangible, and so that's hard. I can't say, I can say we cut X number of trees, or we cleared acres, and that's very clear to the public. But some of the the inside baseball type stuff really gets at what I think you're saying in terms of the hang-ups, and so that's where we've been focusing some time.
Well, and I guess hang up, and this kind of reverts back to Commissioner Perry's question, how long? And we have a squishy answer.
Yeah.
Hang-ups are when you go and do your survey, and then you have to add a year for an additional survey, or you get out there and you find that you've got an environmental area that you need to do an additional survey on. And that's what happens when, Eddy County does, we have different challenges in Eddy County that we consider hang-ups with environmental spills and karst. We have lots of karst that we go out there and identify and have to study and avoid, and then we identify, like you said, our endangered species. So not necessarily hang-ups, but I guess concerns that need to be addressed prior to what Mr. Perry asked is, when are we going to actually get started?
Yeah,
And
no,
that's-
those are all really good questions. And so, the hang-ups that I just talked about, those are real, and we are also working differently with the service in a much better way so that we can have a better planning cycle. So I know it can be frustrating sometimes, but we've got to look 5 years out, and that's what we're doing. So we've implemented a strong 5-year planning cycle so that we can identify those early and try to avoid some of those hangups. We're not going to always be able to avoid them. There's going to be things that come up that we're not expecting, and we'll work through those. But for regular course business, we're aligning things a little differently to hopefully avoid those.
I got one more quick question. How many years have you been doing owl surveys?
Oh, goodness.
There's your answer.
Yeah.
Because I know I was a wildlife student in New Mexico State in 1992, and we came over here and did some wildlife surveys for the Forest Service, which even in 1992, as a 20-year-old wildlife biologist, I thought were a little skewed towards the numbers weren't what they should be. So I guess my question to you is, how long have you been doing these surveys for owls? And what did the 2-year thing that you're talking about say in 1992, and then what did it say in 95, and what did it say in 97?
Sure.
And here we are in 2023, listening about owl surveys again, and it gets a little bit monotonous to think, when are we actually going to do something instead of talking about doing a survey again?
Sure. No,
And how much weight do the other surveys have on today's decision?
So, valid questions. The surveys, to answer your question clearly, I don't know when they started. If you were here in 92.
Well, I know they were doing them in 92. I know they were because I came and helped them, and they showed us how they were done.
Sure.
So how long are we going to do this, and how long are we going to be talking about this before somebody actually takes an axe and starts chopping down some trees and gets back to healthy forest restoration instead of an overabundance of stems per acre that are causing fire
Yeah.
issues? I mean, we have people in other counties that are having a hard time getting insurance on their homes because of the Forest Service mismanagement of the forest. So it's very nice that you're talking about these projects, and it's very nice that something's in the pipe, but how long is that pipe?
Yeah, so those are great questions. So, owl surveys are good for a certain number of time, and then there's resurvey requirements. I know that's not what you want to hear, but I just want to make that clear. It's not we've been doing these for 20 years and so now we can just stop. Not at this time. With SSRP, one of the most exciting things, at least for me, is that we've got experimental areas where we are going to cut impacts because we do realize that. And if we are protecting this forest, then we're going to protect it in the way that we have been. We're going to protect it to death. And we have to be able to go in and cut. So SSRP, in that NEPA, we do have areas where we are going to be cutting impacts. There's going to be the test areas, and then the areas that will leave how they are. We'll be able to show are there detrimental issues if we're cutting in those packs. And then we'll be able to say, okay, like yes or no. If no, we're going to keep moving forward. So that is something that we have been pushing for and that you will see in SSRP.
Kelly Goss, Sacramento Grazing Association. You've talked about hang-ups with SSRP. You've indicated that the ball was kind of dropped on SSRP. Can you give me an idea of how far behind are you on the initial timeline? When was it originally initiated?
Yeah, that's a good point, Kelly. So, I'm not making any excuses. We should have had that NEPA done, and I will take ownership of that. The Forest Service will take ownership of that. It's taken us a very long time to get that NEPA done. We're on track, and it's unfortunate that it's not done. It's been approximately 7 years that it's been worked on.
And one follow-up question. How much funding is the state, the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish, putting into this project?
That is a good question. Marjorie, do you know the exact dollars? That is something that I have to get back with you on the exact dollars, and I will put that on my list.
Okay, thank you.
There are two questions on the Zoom, but real quick, I just want to make a comment that it's unfortunate that the Forest Service can get the leeway and not have consequences of taking 7 years to accomplish something that economically impacts other entities and local government and organizations, and private entities are not given that same leeway and face economic consequences for not being able to comply in a certain amount of time, and certainly not 7 years. That should be communicated and acknowledged.
Are you taking the questions off the Zoom? Or?
Yeah, so there's Robert, and he was first, and then after that, Mr. Proctor. So, Abe, can you let Robert speak?
I think Todd was first, but I'll ask mine real quick. My name's Robert Barber. I'm on the Lincoln County Land Ramp, and my question is: are any of these activities tied to the community defense grant that we're hearing so much about these days? And are you working with adjacent landowners?
So, Mr. Robert, is that your name? Mr. Barber?
Yeah, it's Robert Barber.
Mr. Barber. I don't know about that particular grant. So the WUI areas, to be considered a WUI area, you do have to meet the specifications that the state has set out, and that is for underserved communities, communities at risk. There's a variety of components there. And so I'm sorry, I don't know. Can you tell me the name of that grant again?
It's a community defense grant. It was my understanding that it was it's Forest Service dollars that are working with the state
Okay.
for WUI projects.
Okay, I will have to get back to the commission on that. I'm not sure. My understanding is that the Wildland Urban Interface, I actually am not 100% sure what they're called, but it's the state and other partners, and there's the ability to get those grants. Now, we have talked about doing a fuel break around Cloudcroft, and you know, if we get to that point, we do need to make sure that there's coordinated effort, because just doing that on Forest Service doesn't make sense if we don't also have the buy-in from those private landowners so that they can also do that type of work on private. And so that is something that we have been talking with the state about in terms of the opportunity to apply for funding. But again, I will get some more information on the specifics for the community development grant, and we'll get back to you with information.
Okay, thank you.
Just one comment, is that other grant we're alluding to is the Joint Chiefs grant?
That sounds correct.
Thank you.
You bring Todd in. The next question.
Yes.
Okay. There it goes.
Good morning.
Good
Morning.
morning.
I just want to thank you, Erica, you guys for showing up for this meeting. It's been kind of a long-awaited deal here and a long trial and tribulation here of people trying to get answers and questions kind of all dressed together. And I am Todd Proctor. I am a Lincoln County Commissioner. And I visited with a gentleman by the name of Brian Farabee some time back here, but I'm going to go before that just a little bit and go back to the meeting we had in Roswell whenever we had Travis Mosley explain that the inventory that they had performed, they realized that they didn't have it down right. And I just want to know, is there any chance they're going to go ahead and reschedule that where they can take it off of being a potential wilderness down the road? I know I did hear you say that a while ago, and I like hearing no recommended wilderness. That's a recommendation. I just want to be assured that we're going to follow through with this and they're going to have the inventory changed in regards to that. Because when I was visiting with Brian in St. George, Utah at the conference, he simply stated that there was work being done towards that. I just want to hear from you guys of what if you can go into the detail on that a little more, where we can kind of address the same things that RB was talking about. People, the government taking 7 years. We'd like these people to be assured that they can continue working in a conjunction way with what they've been doing so far. Can you please answer that for me?
Sure. Mr. Parker, I do want to just clarify a few things. So I think what I heard was, now full disclosure, I was not at the meeting in Roswell, and I've heard a bit about it, but I don't have a full understanding of that meeting. So based on your question, what I think I heard was you are interested in the inventory, the wilderness inventory for forest plan
Yes.
revision that's being considered in the alternatives.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Can you help speak to that?
That was a good intro. Yes, it is the Wilderness Inventory Evaluation and Analysis for Forest Plan Revision, okay? And that inventory evaluation and now the analysis did have public comment and review. It also had regional office review. There are no plans to redo that. But during the draft plan and EIS comment period, we heard from folks on the land. They did an excellent job commenting. They brought to our attention some legacy infrastructure. For example, abandoned oil and gas wells that the BLM would have managed, mining adits that the BLM would have managed. I did contact the BLM. They said they did not have records on that old stuff. That's what I was required to do, is use GIS and then, based on public comments, add that information from public comments. Those comments did result in us modifying the proposed preferred alternative and removing the wilderness areas on the Sacramento district. And that is going forward. Those areas were removed from the Sacramento district.
Can we go ahead and discuss what's being taken place up here in the northern portion, in our area here in Lincoln County?
On Lincoln, the areas in the preferred alternative on Lincoln are very small acreages to help with boundary adjustments. There are places in the White Mountain Wilderness that may have been at some point a historic mine. And so you'll have an island of multiple use, tiny little island of multiple use management in the middle of the wilderness. Those areas are in the preferred alternative to be turned into wilderness so that you have a consistent landscape within the existing boundaries of the existing wilderness. There are also some small locations, small acreage locations that are boundary adjustments along the edges of the existing designated wilderness. There are no freestanding large acres of multiple use that are proposed for wilderness.
I have a question on that. How do you have an island of designated wilderness and it's surrounded, multiple use surrounded by desert? Because Doesn't that
So
limit you from
I
coming in?
think it would have been around in the 1940s or so. I can't remember exactly when the White Mountain Wilderness and the Capitan Wilderness were designated by Congress. But at that time, there was a small piece of land. Like I said, it probably was a mining claim. And then it was abandoned at some point.
So that's gonna be the multiple use?
That would have been a little multiple use island, yes.
It just seems like you've got a landlocked island the way I
You do,
see
we
it.
do, we do.
Because
We're actually trying
it's
to.
really, truly not multiple use if it's surrounded by
Exactly, you can,
designated wilderness.
you're right, you could ride a horse if you could probably ride a horse in there, but
But you can't drive an
exactly.
ATV in there.
No, you can't,
Yeah.
no, you can't.
Madam
And these are
Chairman-
like 20, 40 acre little islands, yeah.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
Commissioners, I'm Bill Williams, Chaves County Manager. Glad to meet you all, some of you, and, well, I'm glad to meet all of you. I didn't mean that to sound the way it came out. Thank you all for coming. I have I think an important question that kind of gets to the root of this thing. Now we have 6 alternatives. We keep talking about the preferred alternative. That doesn't make the other alternatives go away, is my understanding. So if we have an inventory of lands that potentially could be considered wilderness area, potentially 402,000 acres in the 4 counties are potentially wilderness areas. It makes no difference that you removed anything in Chaves County because they're still inventoried as such, inventoried incorrectly. And I want to know, why does the process not start over at the very least a supplemental EIS process to assure that everything that is listed for moving forward, like I say, doesn't matter which alternative you pick right now, 5 years from now, you can say, oh, we've got a ready-made list of pre-approved wilderness areas that have already been through the EIS process. What do we need to do to get the point across that we believe that the inventory needs to be redone? You need to start over with the inventory. I know you said you're not going to do that, but that's what we're saying we believe that we deserve and expect. And thank you.
So, Mr. Williams, it's so nice to meet you. I was not at that meeting, and I am not quite sure what the conversation was around inventory being incorrect.
Can I just interject? We had some ranchers that put together an amazing slideshow that showed all of these improvements. I mean, there were fiber optic cables that had run through there. There were county roads. There were the old mining. I mean, there was all kind of improvements. In my understanding of designated wilderness, it is virgin land that has not been disturbed or touched by man. And there is a bunch of stuff on there that was definitely touched by man. That's just kind of bring you up to date of what we're talking about. And now that you have access to drones and stuff, it would seem like you could really zoom in there and kind of do that without having to send boots on the ground to do that.
And the
Just
environmental
an idea.
impact of people who have taken equip monies and so forth to build out the infrastructure to do the jobs that they need to do on their lands. There's a requirement for them to repay that in a lot of cases, and that was never considered. And so those are the kind of things that should have been looked at the very beginning and should have been looked at all the way through, and then you come in with a good solid plan, and then we could get behind that, give and take at that point. But at this point, it just seems like it's all, we're going to take, we're going to do whatever we want because it's forest, and that's not what you're mandated to do by your forest management statutes and guidelines. So.
Okay.
For us, what it seems like right now is that if we accept any of them, it's just kind of like when this becomes law, then it's too bad. And the what ifs, it's too late to figure out the what ifs then, what's going to happen. So we're just asking that it's done right from the beginning and maybe gone back and reassessed and looked at so that we have a good plan going forward and not have somebody that has, gotten money for these improvements. And it's in their contract of the improvements that they make the improvements, but then when it's designated wilderness, they can't get in there to make the improvements. So, I mean, what happens? They come back and they have to pay this loan back? That's not right. That's our concern. We don't want to be answering the stuff after it's too late. We'd like to have it now, before it becomes a law.
And so I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this. So there's an area that individuals put investments into that would potentially be wilderness.
Exactly.
And that's in the presentation, and that was done at the meeting in Roswell.
Actually, that was done
At two
here.
meetings
At two
in
meetings.
Roswell
We had
and,
one here
and two meetings here, we've discussed the same thing. But the
Yeah.
point is, all of the inventory is suspect. Because I don't know how many times the former forest supervisor told us, oh, well, that's new information. Oh, we didn't know that. Oh, well, we'll take that into account moving forward. We'll create a new alternative based on this new information. That shouldn't be new information. That should be stuff that's already been resolved, and before you're ready to present alternatives, that should be ironed out first. And that's the whole problem with the whole forest plan, in my opinion.
Okay.
Erica, for your awareness, those EQIP projects they're referencing, it's not just investments by the individual owners. It's federal funds that they may have had a match on, but it's through typically through the soil conservation in NRCS, and so it's federal money. So if the federal agencies were talking to each other, they should be aware of it. But when that money is spent and those projects are done, there's a maintenance and use period that's usually 15 to 30 years. That they enter into a contract to be part of that project and benefit from it, that they will maintain it and it'll be used for that many years. If this were to be, this land became wilderness, some of those projects cannot be maintained without mechanized equipment. So then we've got a problem. We got a lot of conflicting laws and regulations and federal money involved, and some people just trying to make a living stuck in between.
Okay. All right.
Does that help make a little more sense?
It does.
Our concern?
It does. And so I don't know what the answer is. And this is something that I can certainly look into. And I really am not trying to have a non-answer. I don't
No,
like
we
to-
understand that. We
like to
thank
do
you
that.
for your being clear, your clarity.
We should schedule something for follow-up. I am going to have a good transition period with whoever the next person is, so that I also want to be very transparent. So next week is my last week. So I've been here for a while, and I don't want to make any promises and then leave. That's not who I am, that's not my character. And so we are taking good notes. Hopefully this summer has shown that we're willing to show up, we're gonna come to the table, we're not gonna shy away from these hard conversations. And I need to do a little bit of research on this, and then also make sure that this is communicated and we can have some transition time. And then we are always willing to come to any of the 4 county commission meetings. You guys just let us know if you want us there. We can certainly have more conversations about this so that we are clear and we're just sharing whatever the right information is.
So just a real quick thing just to kind of give you an idea of the scope of where we feel as if the process wasn't followed appropriately. The alternatives were out. It was the comment period before one of our ranching families came to us and says, so what's Chaves County going to do about the forest plan? And we said, what are you talking about, the forest plan? And they had to bring us up to speed on it because we had not been interacted with by the U.S. Forest Service. When that question was asked, they said, well, we sent you an email. Didn't say we sent a series of emails, didn't say we sent a letter, we didn't do anything, we sent an email. I searched our email stuff at work. We could not find where an email to that effect had ever been sent to Chaves County. But another requirement is that you have meetings in each of the counties that are affected. So I asked, well, when did you have a meeting in Chaves County? Well, we had one in Mayhill on such and such a date. And so then I inquired as to whether or not They had looked at a map recently because Mayhill is not actually in Chaves County. And so it was after the fact that we had the first meeting in Chaves County, and we invited the 4 counties. Everyone came together, the farmers, or the ranchers came in and presented their slideshow to us for the very first time. And this was well after everything had been in place, and had someone not come to Chaves County, a local government who you have a responsibility to coordinate with, was out of the loop totally. And so this process has been flawed from the beginning, and no disrespect to anyone who's either here now or had been here previously. We're just saying that we believe that there's a requirement to do it and do it right, and we're okay with that. As long as it's done appropriately and right, then we'll take our lumps if there are lumps. But otherwise, we can't just roll over and allow bad planning, bad judgment, bad record keeping to affect people for decades to come. And that's kind of the bottom line for Chaves County.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure, I understand that. So I do have a question for the 4 counties, actually, because I think this is really important. I want to understand what is the best way to communicate with the counties. What is that preferred method? And let's work together on that.
Well, Diane has done a real good job of communicating with us. Once we were pulled in the loop and we've all kind of aired our differences, she's done a real good job of keeping us in the loop. I assume she has with the other counties as well.
Good, okay.
So she's got all the contacts, and she doesn't shirk her responsibility. I mean, she gets back to you if you have a question, so.
Okay. And so that's great.
And I have about 150 people on an email that I send emails out to all the time, letting them know where we're at, and it's not only with the Forest Service, but a lot of other activities that are going on
That's great.
around us. And so, I mean, I include other people. I know that Chairman Marquardt does the same thing. Commissioner Perry does the same thing. So I think we'll get the word out to our people if you guys continue to communicate with the 4 counties.
Okay, that's great. And are you getting that same level of interactions on other projects? Forest plan revision is incredibly important, and we have a really strong staff in that area. I also want to make sure that we're communicating appropriately with the counties for fire information and the emergency managers, and there's a whole host of other components. And so you don't have to answer that right now, but if there is a need to make adjustments or you would like to see something different, please make sure and let us know.
And for Chaves County, we do get that other information. And given Chaves County has a postage stamp size piece of forest in Chaves County.
But
However,
very
Chaves
important-
County has a postage stamp size piece of forest within its boundaries,
Okay.
which made it even more odd and hard to accept that we were not involved in the forest management plan, because we get all this other information. Why all of a sudden was there a disconnect on this? So,
Sure. Okay.
quit talking.
And this is just kind of a personal statement, I guess, on my part, but I feel like, and I know this is above your pay grade, but forest restoration needs to be above all these surveys, because we get surveyed to death. It takes forever for the owl and all that stuff. We need to take care of this forest. We got to get it cleaned up. That needs to be the #1 priority, because if it burns down, those owls are going to fry too. I mean, it's not going to do anybody any good.
Yes,
So I
ma'am.
think forest restoration needs to be, that would help our water table and to thin out some of the, these catastrophic fires we're having. So if there's any way we could push that to the forefront, I think that would be really important.
Yes, ma'am. And I also want to make sure that we are communicating when we are doing those projects, when we're starting, when we're finishing, just kind of those updates in between, so that you all can see, what is that body of work that's being done.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. And I mean, I appreciate you've been keeping me updated on the fires, because I get calls, we see smoke, what's going on? It's nice to be able to tell them what's going on. So I appreciate those updates.
That's good. Yeah, that one fire up on the mesa, when there was it a craft show?
Yeah, I
At the
was watching
fairgrounds?
the slurry plane drop. That was pretty cool. I was actually talking to you on the phone when
Yeah.
you dropped that load. That was pretty awesome.
Commissioner, I'm going to interject real quick. We do have a question on Zoom from Ms. Byfield, and then after that question, I think kind of where we are in the conversation, we can roll into the next agenda item, which is talking about a formalized written agreement between the counties, which would incorporate these methods of communication and outline how and when we all make it work. So.
Do you want me to go ahead? RB?
Yes, Margaret, if it's still, if you still think it's a good time for whatever your question is.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to, first off, thanks for this discussion. I think it's real healthy, but I just want to, the whole question about the wilderness study areas that were advanced, I just want to clarify the discussion that took place at the last meeting, which the Forest Super, or which you were not at. You keep saying I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what took place. But I think one of the key things, and the commissioners have addressed a lot of what has happened, but I think one of the key things that was pointed out is that the Forest Service employees there were asked directly, were any of these areas that were advanced for wilderness study areas or wilderness areas, did any of them not meet the criteria in the handbook, the Forest Service handbook, on these wilderness areas, what can and can't be advanced? And the answer was no, they all met the criteria according to the handbook. But so then we took a look at the actual handbook and had it up on the screen and saw the language where there are certain conditions that the Forest Service handbook is very clear about, that if, for instance, if areas have pipelines, they cannot be advanced to that as a proposed wilderness study area or wilderness. And most of the area on this forest is covered in those pipelines. And so that is what took place in the last meeting, is that it became very clear that areas were advanced through the inventory process that should never have been advanced. So it's a flawed study. And now they are going to, as Mr. Williams was speaking, now they're advanced forward as something that has been analyzed under NEPA if it continues in the study, regardless of whether it's picked or not. It can be picked at a later day, or it can be picked on this one if DC decides to change the alternative that is recommended. So that's the issue, is that not only was there a substantial amount of information that was not considered in that inventory process, which the Forest Service is very aware of, and they have acknowledged that they missed a lot of information. Not only that, but what was advanced violated the handbook that Forest Service is required to follow, the criteria that you're supposed to follow. So it was flawed on two fronts. And so the request that this inventory be done over is a very, very reasonable request. And it's one that if the Forest Service really wants to advance a study that is robust and well done, and will survive a court challenge, I think you seriously need to consider going back and scrapping the inventory process you've done and go back and redo this right. So that's the only thing I wanted to mention.
Okay, well, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Oh, sorry, and I might not have told you. Margaret Byfield with American Stewards of Liberty.
Oh, Ms. Byfield, okay. I appreciate that clarification. Thank you so much for that, and I've been taking quite a few notes.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
So with that, Chairwoman, we can either stay on the line of talking about the force plan and where it's at, and just go to that and then come back to the coordination agreement, or talk about the coordination agreement and then get back to the force plan. So let's just pick one and flesh it out.
Well, why don't we just finish what we're talking about?
All right.
And then we'll move on.
Okay.
If anybody has anything else.
All right. Yeah, so, anything else on the force plan from you all, Erica?
Not from us, but you have
Well,
to take any additional.
I guess kind of where's it at since
Sorry.
since last we met in March or something in Roswell, and I know Diane kind of said that there had been some changes to the recommendations and things like that, but what's the status, what are the next steps?
Okay. I'll take that.
Okay, the status of the forest plan. So at the time we met all together last spring, we were finalizing the response to comments appendix. So in the EIS, there will be an appendix that includes all of the substantive comments from everybody who's submitted an email or a verbal comment in one of our public meetings or a letter. They will all be addressed in that appendix as to where in the EIS or the plan we made a change, if a change was requested, if we made edits, we'll identify that. If we feel that the subject was covered, but maybe the place that it was located in either document was overlooked, we'll point out where the topic was covered in the plan. That's all in that appendix. It's getting finalized and cleaned up and tech edited. So we have since moved on. We are now consulting with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They have a draft biological analysis, which we've asked them to take a look at. If they're happy with the formatting, we will finalize that so that they can then move on to issuing a biological opinion. And that is where that stands. Both documents, the plan and the EIS, we're currently editing. Erica has reviewed the plan and we've made edits there. And with the EIS, I mentioned earlier that we modified the B alternative, which was the proposed, I believe it's now the preferred. We removed the 3 areas of recommended wilderness on the Sacramento district. Now we need to add that alternative throughout the EIS, and that is where we're at now. We've made some edits to the first 2 chapters. The next chapter is a pretty involved chapter of analysis, every single resource that could be potentially, changes need to be made. And so we're doing some GIS analysis to make sure that our acres are correct. And so we are now working that new modified alternative into the EIS. And that's where we stand.
So the areas that we had questions about that were in that PowerPoint that we had?
Yes.
Some of those are still in that plan, I'm guessing?
So we heard from some publics. So when we developed the alternatives, we heard from a variety of publics. There are folks out there that want as much wilderness as they can possibly see. And so that alternative, I believe, is alternative C. That's not the preferred alternative. For the preferred alternative, we removed those areas that were on the Sacramento district, those large polygons that were on the east side of the district, some of them in Chaves County. Those have been removed. And so now we're working that into the document to remove those areas.
Is there any way we could see, could you send us another diagram of what's included?
For the preferred alternative, what areas of wilderness? I think we might be able to update that. I'll have to ask our contractor for some GIS information, for some maps. Yeah.
That would be helpful.
So, Diane, to clarify, those areas are still in option C, which is the
That's
most.
correct.
Okay, so my point, I think it's already kind of been raised by Mr. Williams, is that whatever gets sent forward, regardless of what the local agency says is the preferred course of action, Congress is free to choose any of the options. And I think our contention would be those areas that you removed, they simply do not meet the criteria and definition for wilderness areas, so why should they be advanced at all?
Okay, so the handbook is fairly broad in what it allows for wilderness. And those areas in Alternative C had a lower criteria for recommended wilderness. They meet the requirements to a degree. The areas that we've put forward have the highest, the most characteristics. It's kind of, I tried to explain this to my husband. I said, it's like when you go to the fair and there's livestock there on show. You're going to have like a not so good looking pig. And then you'll have a better looking pig. And then you'll have like a really good looking pig. And it's the really, really good looking livestock that we've put forward in Alternative B. Alternative C has all the, the not so high quality areas. But there is a range in the handbook. There is a range of criteria for wilderness.
So, say Congress chooses C because they're feeling salty and whatever that day, and don't feel like listening to everyone's advice. That's going to create some real conflicts and problems with these EQIP contracts. What do we do about that?
Well, I agree. But Congress can do anything they want, and it doesn't even matter what's in the EIS. They could walk in today and completely arbitrarily pick an area.
I mean, they have to follow, at least, the regulations and the bindingness of them is we can all debate and talk about, but the Wilderness Act and the confines that it sets out have to be followed, and I'm certain that there is case law that further, fleshes out what is and is not wilderness. So they are bound by that.
Yeah. Yeah. So RB, like I hear what you're saying. You raise some good points. We can't sit here and argue over. Not that we're arguing, but I can't try to speculate about what Congress is going to do. And so the best information that I have is that we listen to the public, all of the public. We put together a range of alternatives that meet the various information that we received. It's pretty clear that the information that was provided at the whatever the Roswell meeting or this meeting, or there was sounds like a series of meetings for, I'm trying to piece together some information here. And so the new alternative that we put together does listen to what was said, and that is our preferred alternative. And so you're right, there could be somebody way higher up from me that makes a decision, but locally here on this forest and in the plan that we're moving forward with, we are doing the best job that we can to listen to what we heard and put together something that is going to make sense. Now, if something else happens, and we'll have to have those conversations, but for now, for what we've been working on, that's what we're trying to do.
So, Mr. Williams has a question, but just clarify, please, for everyone. Do you have a professional obligation that to include every random person's wishes and dreams that are submitted to you? Like, just because they want everything as much as possible to be wilderness, are you under an obligation to include that as an option? How much discretion do you have?
How much discretion do we have? So the 2012 forest, what is it called? The planning rule. The forest planning rule gives guidelines and lays out how we go about the planning process. And so there is an opportunity for anybody to comment. But sometimes we get comments that are not substantive in nature. And so when Diane was talking earlier about receiving good quality comments, so a comment where somebody says, there is a pipeline in this area that you missed, and therefore it does not meet, and you can show me where that is, like, that is a great comment. If I get a comment that says, I love wilderness and I want to see more wilderness, well, that doesn't tie to anything. And so that's not a substantive comment that would be taken into consideration. But if I get a comment that says, there's a area that meets solitude and, all of these other components. And I believe that it is a area for consideration because of these reasons, then that is a comment that we would take into consideration. So it's not quite as black and white as, do I take every comment? It's a matter of, do the comments provide information that is going to help us make a set of recommendations so that we can have a plan? And the plan is the overarching desired conditions for the forest.
Okay, so in these areas, someone could say it meets most of the qualities of wilderness. There's solitude and things like that. They can make that assertion, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and there's trees and there's birds chirping. So sure, but our ranchers that are managing that allotment at any time could come push their herd of cattle through there. They could come through there with a bulldozer because they got to manage the federally funded tank that they have. And solitude's gone. So that person, despite their, what they think, is wrong. It is not, so why even put it on the table?
Well, and so that's where my understanding is the comments that were provided, and help me make sure that I'm understanding this right, those comments that were provided helped us with the modified alternative so that those were removed. And so,
They're removed from one option, but they are still an option on the table.
Right.
They should not be an option on the table.
well, so I'd have to look and see if they meet that range. So it's a good question. It's something I'm gonna have to look into a little bit more, but I do hear what you're saying.
And it's because, Congress is relying on you as essentially the boots on the ground, the experts that have the ability to get in the trees and see what's there. And they're relying on you, if there's a pipe there, to just get it off the table. It shouldn't even be considered because it's has qualities that make it not eligible for that. And that's your all's job and discretion, and it's very important because it affects a lot of people and the forest as a whole. So it can't be, just kind of, well, we'll leave it because it kind of meets it and some people wanted it. No, the people are wrong. There's no solitude there.
Well, maybe, and solitude isn't the only criteria.
Yeah, I know.
And so maybe, so the answer is maybe.
Yeah.
But it also could be, it's meeting the range of criteria that would make it eligible, and then we need to consider that.
Yeah. And I think that just needs to be very clear on paper, how that was assessed and weighed,
Sure.
But Bill.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, and honored guest. I just want to say real quick, you just mentioned that the criteria is very clear and specified in the Wilderness Act. I mean, it's very clear what meets the requirements for wilderness, whereas the handbook is a lot more subjective. In fact, at the meeting, which I realize you weren't there, it was even mentioned that subjectively someone has made the assessment about pipelines. Well, to me, a pipeline is only when it's a certain diameter pipeline. A pipeline's a pipeline. And if we want clear, concise information on how things should be done, the size of pipelines, or pipelines, is it size of pipelines or is it pipelines in general? And then back to the analogy about the fair. There's different levels of quality livestock at the fair. But you know what? A pig is still a pig. And if I put a dairy heifer in the pig show, I'm going to be disqualified. And it should be the same thing for wilderness. Either it's wilderness or it's not. There are not varying levels of wilderness. It either meets the requirement fully or it does not meet the requirement fully. And I don't see that there's a gray area in that. So.
Well, there is a range.
A range, that's true, but not. It either is or it isn't based on the criteria that's already established in the Wilderness Act, not in your Forest Service handbook, or RB or my opinion, or the Wild Earth Guardians or anyone else's opinion. That's not what determines it. It's already been determined, and those are the rules that have to be followed. And again, as RB said, if you choose alternative 6 or C, or C's the bad one, I guess, bad one in my opinion. If you choose a different alternative, that doesn't make the other alternatives go away. And so if those inventoried lands are still there, in error, they're still there and they can be picked on again. So
Okay.
thanks again.
All right, thank you. I appreciate the information.
Because if you pick that area and you designate it wilderness area and it does have a pipeline through it, then that just means nobody can ever service that pipeline in perpetuity. Is that correct? I mean, once it's designated wilderness area, it's hands off. You're not going in there and doing any improvements. So if it's a fiber optic line or something like that, how do you maintain that if it's included in that plan? That's our hope.
Oh.
That's my reasoning anyway, is if, once this gets designated, and we've already shown that it has improvements on it and stuff, how's that maintained going forward? You're not allowed to go in there and maintain anything. So it's a flawed process. It needs to be, I know that they don't want to hear it and they're probably not going to do it, but they need to start over. If they want truly designated wilderness area, they need to do more research on it before it's moved forward, in my opinion.
Okay, all right.
I'm sure they really appreciate my opinion in Washington, but I'm giving it.
Well, we're not in Washington, and I do appreciate your opinion. And this is really good information, and has raised some questions that I have.
But
And
you see where
so-
we're coming from? I mean, it's
Yes,
not even
ma'am.
trying to be contentious, it's just we want it to be done right.
Sure.
So that, somewhere down the road, people are coming to us going, hey, I need to get in there and work on this pipeline, I need to go in there and fix my stock tank, whatever, and now I can't take that heavy equipment in there, what do I do? I don't have an answer for them,
Sure. Yes, ma'am. I do understand and see where you're coming from, and.
It has a little bit too much common sense in it for the government, so it may be kind of hard for them to wrap their mind around it, but that's where we're coming from on
Yeah.
this. We just want to protect our people going forward so they know what the rules are.
Okay. All right, well, I have man, my homework list is getting longer and longer, but that's okay.
Sure. Well,
Hi, Walt Kaufman. I'm Otero County and Commissioners. Thank you for the meeting and honored guests. Just a couple of observations about the Forest Service. We've covered a lot of ground here today, and this meeting is much like other meetings we've had with the Forest Service. We have people saying, well, I don't know, I'll check on it. This is our plan, this is what we're going to do, we think, but we're not sure. A lot of we're not sure stuff. And I think the service, along with the Fish and Wildlife guys, have a long history of problems. Take the owls, which is mentioned earlier. The IG found that the Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife had mismanaged the owl for the last 30 or so years. And in fact, they had no clue how many owls they had or whether there was a healthy population or not. It threatened the owls, and of course, it cripples the economy in those areas that have a forest with owls. So really terrible management. And the Forest Service and Fish and Life were a bit disingenuous about what they were doing, but they got caught, and they got caught by their own IG. So it's a problem. I'd like to say that's the only issue, but of course, that's not the only issue. And my question, back to the heart of this, we're hearing the people say, yeah, we know the inventory is not any good, but we're going ahead. We're going to include that in these alternatives. And that matches up, by the way, with how many countless other projects where people have come and said, we have some concerns about this. And the Forest Service nodded their head, yes, we hear your concerns, and then they've gone right ahead and done what they wanted to do. And so I appreciate the ladies being here today and talking to us, but I'm not sure I believe what I'm hearing. The proof is in actions. And if I heard a commitment to say, we're going to fix this inventory, we're going to do it, it'll be fixed by such and such a date, I might wait for that. But if you recall in Roswell, they said, oh, well, we're going to look into this. We're going to, this is interesting. Thank you for this data, blah, blah, blah. And here we are down the road, and there's really no change. We've thankfully do have them in the meeting talking to us, which is an improvement. But we really do not have commitment to change a problem. And this is not just a minor problem. As others have said, this is hanging over us. So 5 years, 10 years, and it may not be that. Frankly, I think the politicians in Washington want to drive this, so they're not gonna go with that alternative that we think, that we hear the recommended alternative. There's no guarantee they're gonna do that. And historically, they have not gone that way. So that's all I have. Thank you, commissioners.
Anybody else? Robbie, do you have anything else?
No. So I think that unless anyone else has questions or thoughts on the force plan, I think we're at a hold. We still want some more answers. And so hopefully whoever replaces you will be as committed to dialogue and communication with the people working this area and with local government. So that's our hope. So we'll follow up, I guess, in 2 or 3 weeks and give them a little while to get their feet under them and stuff. But this is moving forward, so it's not something we can wait too long on. So, but maybe we talk about that at the end of this, kind of set a tentative. This is when our next meeting should be. I think that's a good idea.
Sure.
But moving on from the force plan, the next thing is coordination agreement. And Erica and I spoke a little bit about this yesterday. Unfortunately, during the time that she has been here, we have not followed up on that. In December 2021, I know that Chaves and Otero County sent a letter to the Forest Service requesting coordination. It's just an agreement coordinating under FLIPMA and what the local government believes is the responsibility of the Forest Service to communicate and cooperate with the local government. And we didn't hear anything from a long time. And then we went over to the Forest Service office and discussed some things that were going on the forest, and Mr. Mosley said to me, why don't we work on that letter? And that was this spring. And so he and I and Mr. Foxworth and Ms. Byfield and counsel for the Forest Service had a meeting over at the Forest Service office, and we kind of went through the letter that I know for certain at least Otero and Chaves had submitted. The other counties may have submitted one as well. And during that meeting, Forest Service Council we have a dispute over what exactly coordination means and what those requirements are. We have different perspectives on that, and the council did not want to commit to some of the language in the agreement. That's fine. I don't care what we call it, as long as we're communicating and being open with each other, transparent, and working together where we can, and acknowledging where we can, and moving on as best we can, realizing we have to live and work here together, and we all benefit or don't benefit from whatever happens on that forest. And so, whatever words you want to call it, as long as we get that in writing. So we left that meeting, and counsel for the Forest Service was supposed to get some examples to me of maybe something that would the agency would find acceptable, or at least a starting point with which we could develop that language. And I believe this was right before the 4-county meeting. We had the 4-county meeting, and Mr. Mosley, like the next day, had a new assignment, and then you came in, Erica, and you kind of didn't get briefed on this maybe the way you should have. And we've all been busy, and we haven't circled back to this. But in the meantime, I did find a MOU between Otero County and the Forest Service from 1996, and had a lot of the language that we are seeking in the coordination agreement. So I'm not aware of that agreement having ever been terminated, so arguably it could be still binding and in effect. It has termination clause, 60 days notice from either party, but I'm not aware of Otero County terminating it. I'm not aware of the Forest Service terminating it. Current council may not like it, but it is there, and it meets a lot of the intent that we're talking about. So I don't know how much there is to talk about today, other than we need to get together and work on this some more.
Yeah. Yeah, so RB, thanks for that, and it was good to, I was just preparing, thinking about like what I was gonna bring, and that was I had some questions about that, and so RB was kind enough to spend some time with me yesterday and just share what he just shared. So thank you for sending that. I did send that to our council. That they will take a look at that. If they have looked at that since I sent it last night, I haven't had a chance to talk to them, and it probably won't happen quite that fast. But we will take a look at that, and we're absolutely interested in having an MOU with the counties. We want to work with you. We want to have good relationships. We want to do good work. The folks on the Lincoln, they live here. These are their communities. These are important to them, and so that communication and those good working relationships with local governments is very important. I had the opportunity several years ago. I was the government relations liaison for the Forest Service, and so I got to work with all the counties. I met several of the commissioners, past and present, and that was such a great foundation for me to really understand how those systems operate and how we can work together. And it's something that has just stayed with me. And so I will say that, we're interested in an MOU, and, we can work through it. We'll take a look at what you sent. We'll need to make sure that it is consistent with current law. But we can work on those things together, and I will double check with OGC. If they said that they would send you examples, then we need to do that. We can make that happen.
Anything else on that?
I don't have anything. Bill, I know you were involved a little bit with that. Anything? Okay.
No, I don't think we have anything to add to that. We just want to point out, however, we feel like that local governments have taxing authority and all that. They deserve a little more than an MOU, and I know you weren't saying that is in stone. You're using that term, but I mean, we believe that it needs to be a little more in depth when you're dealing with other government entities that represent other people, and so just the term MOUs, maybe not the term we're hoping for.
So that's good to know. What term were you hoping for?
Well, an agreement, a coordination agreement, or but I don't believe that MOU sounds as if it's just a simple and passing. I can have an MOU with someone in our county to put a gate on a county road as long as it meets certain requirements and stuff. That's just a step over a handshake agreement. It's just a documented, impromptu or not a real detailed agreement. And we want to be sure that you understand that as government, we have a responsibility to the taxpayers in our counties to do our jobs, and because of that, we need to be involved at a higher level than a cooperating agreement, for instance.
Okay. No, I appreciate that, and I meant no disrespect with the term
I know you
MOU.
did. I know you did.
That's the very That's just common terminology.
No, I understand fully, but I just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
And I also would like to apologize. I know you've reached out quite a lot since you came in. You know, I've sent a lot of letters to Machinko, Martin, Randy Moore, all the way up and down the chain, and we actually met Randy Moore in the hallway and insisted on
We did.
talking to him. He was scheduled to meet with us, and his schedule changed, and he said, well, we got notice a couple minutes early before he was scheduled to speak that he was not going to be able to meet with us. We thought, well, he has to exit, so we met him in the hall. and he's aware of what we believe are the issues, and as is Regional Director Martin, and you have reached out. You've done well. I have had some personal stuff in my life, and that kept me from getting back together with you as quickly as I needed to. I'm sorry that you're leaving because it seems like you really want to work with us. But thank you for the time you've spent. I, again, want to thank Diane. I know she's worked very hard on this, and this is not a personal attack against her or any of your other staff.
Oh, no.
It's certainly just, we've got to do it. We've got to do it for the people that live in our counties. And thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'll say mine for me.
You want to talk about the scheduled meeting that's coming up? We've still got that planned for
Yes,
the
ma'am.
22nd?
Yes, ma'am.
And as far as you know, everybody's coming, Game and Fish and Fish and Wildlife, as far as you know?
As far as I know, I'm not the boss of those other agencies, but as far as I know, yes, and, you know, we've offered Forest Service conference room. We're happy to host and appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation.
Okay, and I think we are planning on having it at the Forest Service room, aren't we? Yeah. Okay.
As far as I know.
Oh, I got another
I
question.
spoke with Representative Vincent just before the meeting, and first I'd like to thank Erica for working on putting this together. And it's unfortunate that I would like to thank Representative Vincent for getting New Mexico Department of Game and Fish to come to the table. And it's unfortunate that the Forest Service couldn't make that happen, that we had to go to our elected officials to put pressure on them to get them to the table. But through Representative Vincent and some other legislators, I think we're going to make that happen. And I would like to encourage those representatives from those agencies to be there in person. I think it's important to be there in person. But Representative Vincent did say he has a potential commitment from the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish, Mike Sloan, to be there in person or on Zoom or Teams. Representative Vincent also agreed to facilitate the meeting because I know Erica thought it was important to have a facilitator, and he said if we have an agenda, he would follow that agenda. I did prepare an agenda, a draft agenda yesterday, so if there's anybody that wants to add any items to that or have any suggestions, they can send it to me and I can finalize it, or if Erica wants to take that on and finalize it. I just didn't want there to not be an agenda and the Fish and Wildlife or New Mexico Department of Game and Fish say we don't have agenda, we're not coming. So I put some of RB's great ideas on there. Kelly Ebert from New Mexico Department of Agriculture had a suggestion to put on there. Spike and I have some items we want to discuss. So I'll work with Erica probably on Monday. Since I would be available through the weekend, but on Monday to definitely finalize that. But as of right now, we do have that as a go. And Representative Vincent was wondering just some logistics if it's going to be Zoom or Teams. So I need to just work out some of those issues with Erica and get the invite sent to those that will be attending via the internet. So.
What's the date and the location?
And so can I just clarify a little bit? So Kelly, thank you so much. That's great. So this is not a public meeting. So this is we are being responsive to SGA as a permittee and as a member of the public who came and asked to have some discussion with agencies. And we have also been talking to Representative Vincent to think through the opportunities to have more of a collaborative effort that would be inclusive of anybody who's interested in these topics, so that there's good communication, there's good understanding. We think there is an opportunity to better share information proactively about what our roles and responsibilities are, how we work together, where those lines are. I know I've had questions. We believe there's too many game on this unit, and we want the Forest Service to go and manage the herds, and that is a state, typically a state responsibility, and is managed by the state of New Mexico in this case. And so I can't just go and and have my own hunt.
Just to make it clear, since SGA is the main focus of this meeting, we have not given you that indication that we believe
No.
that you could go and have your own hunt. I just want to make that clear. Okay.
No, Kelly, I was not saying that. That is not SGA. That is something that I have heard since my time here. And so I say that just as an example of where I think there's some confusion. What's that responsibility versus what's the Forest Service responsibility? We get similar questions over how does the Forest Service work with the Fish and Wildlife Service? And so we're talking with Representative Vincent about something that would be bigger and more collaborative. What Kelly's talking about is a very specific request, and there is going to that will be limited. That's not a public meeting. But Kelly, we can certainly talk about who you do want there, since.
Yes, and it's not a public meeting, and it's something that we've been asking for 10 plus years, and we just want. It seems like the finger pointing goes on if there's not people in the room, and we are requesting the decision makers to be in the room, because we have had some meetings, and it's the same thing that's kind of gone on here. Well, I'll find out, or I'll let you know, or I don't know the answer to that. So it is important to have decision makers in the room that can make some decisions on our allotment. But with that being said, that it's not public, we would like for you guys to come, and you're welcome to come as well. But again, it will be geared specifically to the issues that are happening on our allotment with the elk, which of course everybody else is dealing with those same issues, so it could apply to everybody, but we don't want to have a huge public meeting. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. And the Forest Service is working closely with the state and with Fish and Wildlife Service, and so we look forward to addressing, learning more, talking, and then if there's a desire to have some different meetings that are set up in a different way, we'll certainly be willing to talk about that.
It's an opportunity for a good first step. There is some hesitation by some of the agencies just because of the past. It's a very contentious, complicated past for a lot of reasons, but this is an opportunity to move forward and hopefully be productive. And if we can get some good communication going next week and identify areas where things not only are confusing, they really don't make sense, we can identify those there and hopefully identify the need for bigger discussions and meetings so that that understanding can be spread to the various stakeholders across this county and the state even that have an interest in this issue. And there's a lot to resolve, so hopefully it is productive.
Anybody have anything else? Did you want to say something else? You have that look on your face.
Yeah. I'm Jason Burns from Eddy County, and oops, I spilled my coffee. I've sit here and I've listened, and guys, first I want to tell you, I've sat in your chair through the government processes and and sitting in the hot seat and answering the questions of why and what we're doing. And I understand where you're sitting right now, and I really do. And sometimes it is difficult to explain your specific processes that you have to go through that you're required to meet. So I understand the seat that you're in. With that being said, the message that I'm taking from here and what I'm hearing is you guys are going to progress and proceed with what you want. And that really your projects that you progress, no matter how beneficial they are to actual New Mexico and the Lincoln National Forest and the counties, you're going to push forward what your priorities are. The plan is going forward. No matter that you've got 5 counties and organizations telling you this is not right, this is not beneficial to us, well, we're sending it in anyways, and may the odds be ever in your favor. That's not right. And you made a comment earlier, and I'm kind of concerned about it, that Congress can do whatever they want. Yes, we understand they vote, but no, they can't. This is still the United States. We are still a democracy. We are still a country of laws and courts. And what we're trying to tell you and what you need to send to your predecessor is you've got 5 counties here and government organizations and our support entities that are against this. And we're trying to do this with you right now. We're trying to want to do this together and help you so that it benefits everybody as, you know, a team and a deal. And if we need to go against you, I'm sure it wouldn't be real hard to do that and fight you from the other side of it and let the man in the black dress decide what's right and wrong from your own rules and regulations. So the communication, the agreements, the things that, you know, Mr. Williams and Commissioner Perry and our other commissioners have said, we're all singing the same tune. And that needs to be passed along, that guys, we might need to turn around and really look at these guys, because at some point we're going to get fed up and we're going to band together and we're going to come tell you, no, hey, we're trying to work with you. We're going to come tell you, no, you won't. And we're going to make you go through us instead of with us. So really understand the message. And, you know, I really do appreciate you guys. And I know there's personnel changes that are always difficult, and that seems like that's any government entity, is especially at the federal and the state level. And that's really a problem, especially in New Mexico, is the people that are up here trying to do things are either less than 2 years on seat or 2 years away from retirement. Right. And we can't get any consistency on these things moving forward. And that's why you end up with these deals taking years and years, which, you know, if we want to talk about it for another 10 years, nothing changed, that might be all right. But again, the things that would be beneficial are taking the time and not getting done. The clearing, the Forest Service, the coordination, and the plans that actually might happen that would really be a detriment to some of these guys in New Mexico are just steady on. We hear what you're saying, but we're going to go ahead and do it. So please come to the table before we kind of gather up together and bring you to the table. So.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and yeah, it can be hard to sit up here, as you know, but it's important, and we should be here, and we're happy to be here. And I hear what you're saying. You know, your point about Congress can do what they want, that's a good point. That was a flippant comment, and I do apologize for saying that. That was
Well, I think I said it, and it feels like that sometimes.
so.
We understand it. You send it up, it's high enough level, they don't understand the local voice. But you've got enough voices here right now that it's understand.
Yes, and you know, I hope that you did hear that we have that modified version that did take that out. And so there's a few things here that like I said before, you know, I know that's not a satisfactory answer, like that stinks. It's a really big document, you know, for those of us who have read it, like it's no joke. And I don't know that whole document by heart. And so I want to make sure that I'm giving the best possible answer. And there are also other entities, other comments, other perspectives that we also have to take into consideration. And so I just want to make sure that that is understood as well. And, from what I could tell, having read the plan, and having read the modified, to me, that was, okay, we got information and we made a change. And so, I hear that that is not quite satisfactory. Hopefully you can at least see that as, we are willing. And, of course, we want to be at the table with you. But I very much understand where you're at.
I think this could be a really good opportunity for the federal government to finally work with somebody, because honestly, we've got 5 counties that I'm in contact with a lot, but when I'm at the New Mexico board meetings, I could get a lot more counties on board with this. I mean, we could make a really big stink if we wanted to, because I think probably I could get 30 other counties on board with a lot of this stuff. And maybe we need to take this opportunity to just have the federal government say, you know what, we didn't do this right. We're going to listen to the people this time. That would be awesome if something like that could come out of New Mexico, because anywhere you go in the United States at any of these meetings, people in the Southwest absolutely feel ignored from Washington. It's like they don't give a crap about our way of life because they don't live it. They live in a high rise, they don't own any land, they've never run any cattle, they have no clue what it takes to feed this country. And so if we could start here and, start the movement in New Mexico and maybe have the federal government actually listen to us and listen to the people that elected us, it would be an awesome movement. So maybe you could pass that on to the higher ups and just tell them, we want to work with you, but we want what's best for our community. And it's not getting the heavy hand of the federal government. That is just not how this is supposed to work. We're not a democracy, we're a representative republic. And that's what we need to remember. So if you could pass that on, tell them, we want to work with you, but we don't want to get run over either. I mean, we're kind of getting, we just feel like we're in the crosshairs all the time. But between the endangered species that's going on, our forests, everything. And it's, you can only push people so far until they start pushing back. And so we would rather work with them than fight them in court, but we're getting there, So they need to realize they can't just make all these rules and not expect us to push back when they don't apply to us. That's not how we live here.
Yes, ma'am.
But I do thank you all for coming today. I know this wasn't easy. It's not easy to sit here, but I appreciate you so much, Erica. You've been a breath of fresh air since you've been here. I mean, since my time as commissioner, we've definitely had more interaction with the Forest Service than we've ever had, and I appreciate that. I don't think I've ever asked you anything or called you that you didn't answer my call, my text, whatever. You've always answered me, and I appreciate that. And I hope that your predecessor will do predator. That might be closer than I think. I hope that whoever comes in after you, and especially the permanent one, will continue the open line of communication, because it helps.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, I will share.
Okay.
I made a commitment to you. It's interesting. So day one, I walked right into a meeting, and there's high stakes, high emotions, and that's not my favorite way to meet people for the first time, but we got to have good conversations, and I promised you that day that I would always come to the table, and I meant it.
And you have.
And we can have hard conversations. I'm not always going to tell you what you want to hear, and sometimes I have to deliver some hard news, but we can always talk about it. And that's how I operate. That's an expectation from Mitch Cole-Martin, from the regional forester, and that's how she operates as well. And so I fully expect that you will see the same level of engagement. And like I said, I am going to have some time for transition with a new person. I will make sure that that everybody is aware of who that is. When I found out I was going to be coming, I was doing some cold calls and just looking on websites and trying to find emails or phone numbers, and so I think it would also be good, and I want to be helpful to the next person. So maybe I can send the list out to the counties of who I have, just to make sure that we've got the best contact information, and then figure out how we can introduce the new person. And then, like I said, for the next county commission meeting, at least in Otero, I don't have all the calendar dates for all the counties in front of me, but I probably will not be here. But I do want to make sure that the next person can come. And then also the district rangers. So that's something that we've tried to increase as well. So we want you to know those folks too. So we had talked about the rangers coming to all of them, so that just everybody knows. You might not live in Cloudcroft, but still good to get some FaceTime and know who the ranger in Ruidoso is, right? And that way we can just continue that level of communication.
Okay, that would be amazing. All right, do we have anything else? Yes, sir?
I'm just going to make a public comment here. I'm Chuck Andreas from La Luz. I'm just an individual concerned citizen. Been sitting through these meetings for months with the Forest Service. Been out to some of the trails with the commissioners. And I'm going to commend the commissioners and the Forest Service personnel here today for trying to get together. But there's always more than one way to accomplish a task. I feel that we're dealing with a Rube Goldberg apparatus. If you guys know what a Rube Goldberg thing is, to accomplish a task of pouring some water into a glass. You can take that picture up and pour it down into the glass, or you can run through an entire maze of contraptions. This little thing pushes that thing, and which knocks the thing over and moves this thing over here. The little thing comes swinging down over here and knocks that over and to do the same task. And that's what I feel the Forest Service is doing. They have people in here who try to do the best they can with what they got, but they're in a big, massive Rube Goldberg apparatus. And to get something to push something, little thing over, you got to go through this entire process, like the owl, the spotted owl, the Mexican jumping mouse, or the checkerboard butterfly. There's always something in the way of accomplishing the task at hand. And one task I'm really concerned about, and it's been going on for decades, is our ranchers. I just know a little tiny bit, and it saddens me that we're putting family-run operations through this Rube Goldberg apparatus that's draining one of our precious resources, our ranchers. And I just feel really sick about it, because they're up to this behemoth of a Rube Goldberg apparatus that is not working. And like this commissioner or this gentleman over here, I don't know these guys, but we all feel the same thing. We feel the animosity. And the Forest Service people here trying to do the best. I know they're trying to do the best they can. They got these parameters stuck around them, but there's always ways around. I used to work for the government in the 70s and 80s, the Federal Bureau of Lesser Men, BLM. Worked with the Forest Service. And the task, to give you one little tiny bit of example, we had to paint an apron with concrete paint. I was supposed to go through GSA. It would take 2 months, and I need 2 gallons. Take 2 months to get it. It was at that time, it was $35 a gallon. And so all this paperwork, yet I could go down to Ace True Value hardware store. They had the same paint, met the same specs for $12. I wrote a SS44, used to be a check, to that agency. I got it the next day. And it was 3 times cheaper, and we got it done quicker. But it took initiative on my part to do it. And that's why I resigned, because I was fighting the apparatus I was in. But to make it a long story short, just this morning, just before coming here, we have over 50 chickens, and I have it all fenced in, heavily fenced in. I had one got loose this morning. I don't know how she got through there. But I see her outside the fence. She's underneath a big mesquite tree and a bunch of bushes. And I'm out there talking to her because they respond to my voice. And I said, come on, it's okay. Trying to coax her out there for 10 minutes to try. And she's just sitting there. She's happy. You know what made her move? I had to pick up some rocks and throw them to the west side of her to get her to go to the east. And that worked. And then she stopped. And they were throwing little rocks. And so then I had to take a bigger rock and get like within 1.5 foot of her to get her to butt to move. And she got through that fence. And I saw how she did that. But the point of this is sometimes we have to, I'm not saying literal rocks, okay? Don't take that. But sometimes we have to push the people who are supposed to work for us, the people, to get them to do things that they may not want to do. But we need to push the people. We have to throw rocks, not literal. Some people might want to do that, but that's all I want to say. Just say we're really frustrated, and I appreciate the commissioners taking a stand, and you can get more people together. We can get a lot of people together, but to get things done, and we need to do that. And that's just one way of doing it. Having communication is the easiest way to solve those problems. And let's just do the action. I mean, let's speak, and then let's let our actions follow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not to beat a dead horse, I think it's actually still a little bit alive, so I am going to kick it a little bit. On the force plan, Erica, you stated that it's really big. It's a very large document, and there is a lot of material and information in it, and that's why it's so important that you and your staff have the attention to detail and the give a shit factor that really digs into it and considers the legal definition of what a wilderness area is and considers the case law parameters on that and sticks to that very closely, because the consequences for people's livelihoods, even people not working the force, just their insurance policies are affected by what the force plan is. And if you guys don't have that attention to detail here, no one's going to have it higher up, because they're looking at multiple big ass documents. And we know the standard practice for Congress is to take a 3,000 page bill, not read it and pass it, and we'll deal with it later. That's what they do. Asking you don't do that here, because you can do better, and we just request that. And we already know that there was some lack of attention to detail on this big document before, when all those things were missed. That if you guys were looking at it in the detail that I think is necessary, you would have found them yourselves. I think you're using contractors to do some of it, which makes it harder, but that detail and attention are absolutely necessary, because the impact on individual people's lives and the future of the forest even is too big. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, RV. And also, having worked on other plans, the comments that we get are so critically important. We're talking about really big areas, and but I hear you. I hear you loud and clear.
thank you.
Okay, does anybody have anything else? Okay, well, I guess then we will be adjourned. Go eat lunch. Thank
right.
you, everybody, for
Thank
coming.
you all so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you.